weekend, Edgar Wright's The Running Man dropped in theaters. So today I'm going to stop and rank all 7 of Edgar Wright's narrative films from the least best to the best. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of Edgar Wright's movies, and if you've seen his documentary, go ahead and throw it in there too. I just haven't been able to watch it yet. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I'd love to see yours, and let's get started. In last place, Last Night in Soho. To be perfectly clear, I don't think Edgar Wright has made a bad movie. I think this is a good movie with great parts, but ultimately it's his least satisfying film because I don't think it fully sticks the landing. On the positive side, it was very refreshing for Edgar Wright to bring his style and creativity to such a wildly different genre from what he's done before, in which case you get all of his kind of creative flourishes in his transitions. There is so much interesting camera work that takes place and the use of the choreography.
And then in a sort of euphoric sort of peak, it becomes kind of Eloise again, played by Thomas and Mackenzie. And it was supposed to happen once. Jen White, our amazing choreographer, we were coming up with some transitions. She'd sort of done 6 in a row and say to take your pick, here's some ideas. But as you're shooting on a camera, you start to think, well, maybe we should do all 6.
The use of mirrors, there's so many things going on here that just make for interesting visual storytelling.
The whole point of the movie is that they have a connection in their dreams, and it was really important for the 2 actresses to be in the same shot. So what you're actually seeing here is like half a mirror. There's a mirror right here because obviously you can see Matt Smith's real reflection, and that's Matt Smith. On this side, there is a green screen behind Thomas and Mackenzie. We have to shoot the reverse play of the nightclub and put it into this section here. So essentially it looks like one seamless shot.
All in his genre, so different from what he's done before, which were, lighthearted, action, comedies, kind of having fun with genres. And this is much more of a serious take on kind of a psychological thriller, but still with all the creativity and talent on display. But I think ultimately the problem here is that as clever as the filmmaking techniques were, the resolution of the story lacks all of that wit. Where it's a story built around intrigue and mystery of what's going on here, who's behind this, who's this person, what happened to them. And by the time you get to the 3rd act, because they've only set up 2 mysterious characters, the big reveals aren't really all that big of reveals. There's only so many people they could possibly be. And because so much of the movie is spent making us feel bad for Anya Taylor-Joy's character, that her ambitions led her into kind of this world of desperation, when you get to the final reveals, it's ultimately just not satisfying because it doesn't feel like that's the journey that I've been on. That's not the satisfying resolution to her journey. And so by the end of it, it's like, I love the filmmaking techniques. I love the switch of the genre. I just wish the script itself had the same wit as the filmmaking. Number 6, The World's End. Once again, there's so much in here that I thoroughly enjoy, but I think in the case of this movie, I think their ambitions perhaps got a little bit too big and they tried to do too much with just one movie, and so certain things don't feel like they blend together quite right. On the positive side, once again, Edgar Wright finds a way to kind of tackle and celebrate multiple different genres all in one film, where it's kind of a movie about getting older and looking back on your regrets and how some people grow up and some people don't. It's on alcoholism.
I think since the movie came out, when we actually did the press tour for that film, he hadn't talked about his own alcoholism. In that respect, it was actually like Repressed Brits. that don't talk about our feelings is like, let's not talk about this elephant in the room. Let's just write a film about it instead. So I think for me and Simon, it was kind of the film was therapeutic to write.
And so it's thematically kind of has some very rich subject matter that's very personal, but it's also kind of this invasion of the body snatchers film. And in the midst of it, there's other sequences where Edgar Wright's talked about how they were heavily influenced by Jackie Chan and Sammo Hung.
So this is a tribute here to Sammo Hung, the famous Hong Kong action star. In this scene, it's just worth watching Simon Pegg try to finish his drink. That to me is like the funniest bit, is where we try to combine, much like the master Jackie Chan himself. But this is a little tribute here to Drunken Master 2. As I said, Brad Allen, he basically came out through Jackie Chan's stunt team.
Which is just a lot of fun. Like, that's kind of the brilliance of Edgar Wright, is that he has such a love for film and such a deep knowledge and he can bring together all these different pieces and make something that feels fresh and true to him while celebrating all of these things from the past that he's loved. But I feel in trying to do all of these different pieces, it doesn't quite pick a lane as well as the other two movies in the Cornetto trilogy, where Shaun of the Dead, Pitch Perfect, spin on a zombie movie. Hot Fuzz, Pitch Perfect, spin on an action thriller of the 80s and 90s. And this one, it's not like, you know what it's doing, but because it's so much about the friendship and this very broken man and his alcoholism, and then it's suddenly invasion of the body snatchers, but still in the middle of it, we're still trying to do the run, and he's over, like, it's like trying to tackle all these ideas, and you can see the connections they're trying to make about returning home, but it's not what you thought it was, and how it's changed, and it's not what you remember. Like, you can see the built-in metaphors that he's going for, but I just don't think it fully quite lands as well as he wants it to. And that because it can be so silly, and we'll do like, you know, edgelord jokes and someone's thrown into a wood chipper for a laugh, and then you have a guy in the third act, in the context of all this craziness, like breaking down emotionally over going to rehab. I think just that tonal balance, it doesn't land quite as well as his other movies. And so for me, this one was easily the weakest of the Cornetto trilogy, while still having so much great stuff in it. And Simon Pegg is fantastic in the movie, but it just, for me, I much prefer the other two. Number 5, The Running Man. Now, I saw this movie a week ago. It's been out for 3 days now, so the general first reactions to the movie are absolutely out there. And I've been really surprised by how many people are flat out disliking this movie and calling it bad. Because I watched it, I went, hey, that doesn't really feel like an Edgar Wright movie, but man, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that. And for me, they were able to tell a grander version of the Running Man story. Arnold Schwarzenegger himself has talked about how this is the one of his movies he would have wanted to remake.
The only movie that I always wanted to have redone in my movies was Running Man. And so now this one really did it and did exactly that. So really fantastic.
Thank you.
And the reason for that is that they couldn't tell as big of a story back in 1987. And Edgar Wright himself talked about how
I had actually read the book as a teenager before I saw the 1987 version. So I was well aware, even as a teen, that it was a radically different adaptation. And so I think as I became a movie maker, it always stuck in the back of my head that there was another entire movie to be made from the source material.
And I read The Running Man when it was published as part of the Bachman books when I was 14 years old. I'd actually read the book before I saw the 1987 screen adaptation. And now, decades later, having made the film that I envisaged in my head as a 14-year-old, with some changes, of course.
And watching it, you have kind of this story of a man on the run from the entire general public and kind of tapping into these ideas about a government that's completely controlled by the media and the news shows and the game shows. It's all kind of intertwined into this one messy ball. In college, I read a book from Francis Schaeffer called How Should We Then Live? And it came out in the 1970s. And it was basically tracking the history of Western thought and the main philosophies of different eras. And there's a section on the world we're heading towards, and it discusses how the news will be used to control narratives, to shape society, leading to an authoritarian state. And Running Man is the story version of that. That's what Stephen King wrote, and then that's what this version of the movie is. I mean, both versions of the movie, but this is the truer to the Stephen King source material. And so I just had a good time with it. All that said, other movies like this have come out over the last 15 years. The original source material predates Hunger Games and all, Squid Game and all that by decades. But because in live action blockbuster form, it's been done by other people in the last 15 years, this does feel a little bit familiar. Likewise, it lacks a lot of the Edgar Wright-isms. It feels like a movie any number of other people could have directed. It feels like a movie that was kind of optimized by focus groups for the broadest possible audience and loses some of the rough edges of Stephen King, and it loses the stylistic flourishes of Edgar Wright. And so you get a movie that, like, it's just my thing. It's got Glenn Powell, Josh Brolin, genre that I enjoy. I had a good time with it, but it doesn't have necessarily anything where it excels specifically. Coming in at number 4, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. And in terms of vibes, visual style, there is no movie that has ever been made that is anything like this film. Every single shot feels painstakingly crafted to be fun and interesting. It's this kind of bizarro blend of comic books, music, video games, in this live action aesthetic that is unlike anything else we have seen in the live action format. And it keeps doing new inventive things, whether it's doing a music sequence and they're just playing, their band's practicing in their living room, where their characters are talking and the way that it intercuts conversations in different locations. Of course, the way the action scenes take place, the way they're visualized, the way they're choreographed, the way people turn into coins, everything about it has so much personality and is so fresh and distinct. And it feels almost like a precursor for a lot of what like Lord and Miller started doing in animation, except they did it, or Edgar Wright did it, in live action several years before all of that. It's just so much creativity. Things like visual onomatopoeia all throughout the movie just seamlessly taking place. And then even kind of beyond that, the cast here is just crazy good, where Scott Pilgrim is messing around with Superman, Captain America, Captain Marvel, even Punisher shows up. The drummer from the theme song from the TV show The OC is in there. And of course, Anna Kendrick is in there. And then you got cranky Audrey Plaza. Like, the cast here is just fantastic. It's amazing. And everyone is this lively, interesting character. All of that said, it's very much a movie that it's style over story. And because of that, I think it runs out of steam before the end credits roll. When you have someone battling 7 X's, inherently it gets cyclical. And the first time an X shows up and you do a battle and like, this is so cool. And you do the second one and you got Chris Evans showing up and it's different. Wow, this is so fun. But you get to the third, the fourth, and you're like, all right, I get it. I get what we're doing here. And then you still have 30 minutes left in the movie. And so I think it's one where the novelty of the style wears off. And because you're not really invested into the emotional stakes of this relationship with Ramona Flowers and knives and all of this, you don't really care about the characters. You like the characters, they're fun, but you don't care about the emotional arc. And so when the gimmick wears off, it's like, okay, I think I'm done with this movie, but there's still a little bit left. And so kind of another one of these ones where I wish that it had been just kind of fine-tuned a little bit better, because the style is fantastic. The energy, amazing. It's a truly unique film. In a world of so many movies that are generic and devoid of a unique flavor. It's so unique but it runs out of steam before the end. Real quick before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share your ranking of Edgar Wright's films. Also, if you enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other director rankings, deep dives into their filmographies. You can check that out in this playlist somewhere around here when this video's over. In third place, Hot Fuzz. I always want to put this movie in first place because when it hits, it's fantastic. But I feel like it has the opposite problem of Scott Pilgrim, where Scott Pilgrim runs out of steam before it gets to the end. And I feel like Hot Fuzz takes a little bit too long to get going, and therefore it drags a little bit in the middle, and then it ends with this slam bang finale that is so satisfying. But I think in the part at the beginning, setting up the small town and things are off, it just lingers a little bit too long, and it needed some sort of big action set piece a little bit sooner in it, and not just be such a slow burn getting to the big payoff at the end. All of that said, Edgar Wright does these pitch perfect spins on his favorite genres. He's talked about it in interviews how
when I was very young, I would make these kind of like sort of genre like parodies. And because I'm like a kid that grew up in a small town in England, is this thing about like the reinterpretation of Hollywood movies.
And the way that he sees them. He doesn't think they're satire, they're not send-ups, they're not really spoofs. It's just his version of them. And he's leaning into all the cliches. And as much as he's having fun with them, he also loves the cliches too, and he's having fun with them. So finding a way to take that thing that's done to death and just having a witty spin on it. And he does it with just absolute pitch perfect tonal perfection, which is always why I want to put it in first place. But the pacing, the dragging in the middle, taking too long to get going, holds it back from that place. But stylistically, this has a bigger budget than Shaun of the Dead had. And because of that, I think it's just, and it's his second movie, that bigger budget plus more experience, you just can see his style kind of solidifying. It's such a confidently directed film. There's so much meticulously choreographed action, but also camera work and transitions. It's visual wit of just being really smart in the visual language of his films that are truly true to him, while also being true to the movies that he's celebrating and having fun with. So, man, it's one of those ones that, like, I just wish I could have it a little bit higher, but I think it needed to be a tighter film or something to, like, add a bit of burst of energy more so in the middle of the film, and that would have put it easily at number 1. Our runner-up, Baby Driver. This is Edgar Wright's most mainstream film. It's also his highest grossing film, and deservedly so. It takes a familiar genre, heist movies, and does the Edgar Wright version of it. That it is just jam-packed with his creativity, his meticulous planning, his intricate attention to details, and makes for a movie that fits perfectly into a familiar genre to the general public, but that has so much energy and style to it. He's talked about how he wrote scenes in the movie to music.
This opening sequence, I basically wrote the entire thing to the song Bell Bottoms by the John Spencer Blues Explosion, and I started imagining a car chase to go with it.
And then all throughout the film, it is edited to the music, to the sound effects, and it just makes everything have this life and energy that you just don't normally get out of movies like this.
Tom Rothman at Sony gave this proclamation, which I think this is quite a tall order. He said, I need 6 shots in the trailer that nobody's ever seen before. And I was like, wow, nobody's ever seen before? Okay, so we had to try and figure out what the 6 shots were in the script that were, these are the trailer shots.
It fits perfectly into the genre, but it's perfectly an Edgar Wright movie. And I would contrast this film with The Running Man, where this is very mainstream. It's very much a film that general audiences could embrace, but it's only a movie that Edgar Wright could and would make. And The Running Man, though I really enjoyed it, is a movie that feels purely optimized for the general public and lacks, not that it's poorly made, but that it lacks the Edgar Wright-isms. And this movie is like all Edgar Wright-isms in a genre, making a genre picture. The cast across the board is a ton of fun, and he was able to recruit all of these big names to appear for just specific heists, and they're not even necessarily in the whole movie, but they kind of come and go, adding into these little bits to it. There's so many ways in which they use visual effects properly, where they would do very cool car stunts, and it was done practically.
The one thing that we needed to do afterwards, we'd shot the stunt, and Bill Pope, the cinematographer, had said, you need something to make him do the first turn. So actually, this truck is entirely digital, and this truck is just reversing out to give a reason for, like, Baby to swerve the first time.
And so you watch it, every shot is believable, everything you buy into it. It's thrilling, it's exciting, it's familiar, it's romantic, it can be a little bit funny, and all of it is pure Edgar Wright joy. But coming in at number 1, Shaun of the Dead. Now, perhaps the reason this one got a slight bump in this version of this ranking is because last month I did a 31 on 31 for zombie movies. I ranked 31 of the most famous zombie movies of all time. And in that context, I've just been celebrating and loving zombie movies. And the thing that made the Cornetto trilogy kind of so fun and special was that celebration of genre movies while having this comedic spin on it, that it could poke fun in many senses and all these different things about the genres, but always out of love. And coming from a place of absolutely understanding what makes the genres work. So he was able to make a fantastic zombie movie, one of the best zombie movies, while at the same time putting his own stamp on it. And he could lean into all the tropes, all the cliches, but always with his own little spin on it that made it clever and fun and witty. And there's just that freshness, that youthful energy that even as they were making this, small budget, limited film, there was so much attention to detail in the little gags, the transitions, the style. And that to me is kind of what kind of cuts through a little bit. There's always this back and forth on my top 3 on these movies between Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Baby Driver. And Hot Fuzz, the pacing knocked it back. And then that back and forth between Baby Driver and this one, I think what edges out Shaun of the Dead is that Baby Driver is a more conventional film with style versus Shaun of the Dead stylistically in the way that it's told, as well as the genre itself in the way that it celebrates and has fun with genre at the same time, is more interesting. There's more specificity, distinctness to it than with Baby Driver, and that's what edges it out for me, so it comes in at number 1. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out my other director rankings in that playlist right over there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much.